Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
I'm ready.
Welcome back to another episode of the Barbers Brief, coming to you from Calgary, Canada. I'm V. He's Mark.
I am. He is.
If you're a new listener, we use this forum to discuss things that have caught our eye over the last couple of weeks. We highlight our marketing moment, get into an audience Q&A, and of course, finish off with ad of the week. If you're a subscriber already, a deep and heartfelt thank you goes out to you. Good morning, Mark.
This is a nice intro, V. I
What'd you
like
think?
that. I like that a lot.
Well,
I think it's very sincere.
Fergus O'Carroll talks about like he's from Chicago. I'm like, well, hey, we're from Calgary. We should start plugging that a little bit as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. The news center of the West.
Then you, I love.
I was going to say center of the universe, but it'd piss off a lot of people from Toronto.
And it's okay for you to say that because you're originally from there.
I'm from there. Yeah. Well, Burlington is actually the center of the universe, but
there it is.
you know.
That's incredible. So in the news, what do we got? You want to kick us off? Do you want me to go first? What are you thinking?
Why don't you go first? There's this really juicy story. You were like all over it.
I was all over this.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to talk about this week or next week, whenever it was.
Yeah. So ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery plan to launch a joint sports streaming platform.
That's
Dun,
huge.
dun, dun. That is huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. You know, now this new platform is going to be owned by a new company with its own leadership and will offer essentially like a skinnier bundle version for everything for sports fans. So
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem we've always had is when you're trying to buy linear TV or cable, you just wanted specific channels. Well, they're really taking that to that next level and kind of giving the consumer what they need. It really aims to be that hub for sports programming, potentially adding independent networks like the Tennis Channel as well.
Yeah.
And then also the price, there's a lot of speculation around the price, but it seems like people are feeling like somewhere around the $45 to $50 mark for that sports package, if you will.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. But I'm going to pose a question to you. Have we not just come full circle a little bit with all of this?
In what way? How do you mean?
This also always, we went to these platforms because they were ad free. Now they're
I see. Yeah.
they're ad based, right? And if you want no ads, you have to pay a premium.
Yeah.
Now all the sports in one area, I would argue that always existed when you had your own traditional cable TV.
Yeah.
I just feel like we've come full circle.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's interesting too. Like, I think there is a huge premium for sports because it is one of the last places where you have a live audience that tunes in. You don't generally, I should say, rewatch games and things like that, unless it's like NHL classics or whatever. But you don't get the same kind of audience. I saw that the Super Bowl had what was the stat? It was something like more people had watched that than anything live since the 1969 lunar expedition. Like, it was huge numbers,
over 115 million or something crazy.
Yeah, maybe it's because of Taylor Swift. I don't know, but it's pretty amazing when you think about the importance of sports in terms of live audience, and like a reach per second kind of thing. Like, you can't get that other places.
Sure.
And so it's interesting to see all these organizations like merging all their assets together. And you're right. Like, it is funny because you're going full circle now. But even the other one is interesting too. I've been thinking about a lot. On Netflix, they're getting like the Drive to Survive.
Yes.
And then they've got Full Swing, and they've got a NASCAR one now, and they've got a Tour de France one now. And so it's interesting seeing them pulling out the drama from those seasons and turning live sporting events into TV programming.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of interesting seeing how important sports is as far as a content play goes in the whole media landscape.
That's a great point. And
anyway, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I cut you off.
I was just going to say your point around it being the last place where live matters. Rarely are you going to go watch a game after the fact. If you miss it live, you missed it. You'll just get caught up on highlights. You'll get caught up
Yeah,
on, unless you're a real diehard and you're going to exclude yourself from all social and things like that.
yeah,
It really is the last place that you need to watch live to really gain the full experience.
totally. Yeah,
All right, what
cool.
would you have?
Snap. It was like there's so many earnings coming out, and a couple of my stories
Sure.
around earnings. But so Snapchat took a bit of hit in terms of their stock price, and so the analysts, from what I gather, the analysts are talking about Snapchat having a negative market response,
Okay.
in part because advertisers that are out there are looking at constricting their budgets, looking at placing their bets on the most efficient medium.
Totally.
And because of the nicheness of Snapchat,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have the reach you can get with a platform like Meta. And so if you're looking at different opportunities and you go, okay, well, I got $1 I can spend. Do I split it between Snap or Meta, or do I just put that full dollar into Meta?
Totally.
So I think that's the response that I thought was interesting. That, I mean, there's a limited. It's not like your first channel. It might not even be your second, third, or fourth. So if you've got money left over, there's kind of an opportunity there, unless you're targeting really young people exclusively
Mm-hmm.
with something like Prime, or I don't know what the product would be, but
That's a great point.
yeah,
But the platform itself is still very popular. Again, I think that the main demo I think right now is Gen 8 that a lot of I think they're using it, or is it Gen Z? I don't remember. I did see
I don't
something,
know.
and it is a
Yeah,
very interesting channel. I remember we had an opportunity. We worked actually very closely with them during my time at WestJet, and I would say as a platform, they're far more advanced in all things like augmented reality. They have some of those
yeah,
lenses are like just really cool. You can create some
yeah,
great some great custom instances of those. And I think from
yeah,
an advertising perspective, it is just a fantastic channel. But again, the reach on it is going to be somewhat limited.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, it was just interesting seeing that, because that was like, it's always when these when you and I were working together a while back, like it was
Yeah,
when Snapchat came out, and Snapchat is going to kill Instagram.
totally.
Here we are, however many years later, and Instagram's still doing okay. Meta's fine.
That is really
Yeah,
fine. Well, it's funny
yeah,
because like they would just take a lot of the technology or some of the newness that would come from other platforms and just incorporate into their own, right? You think
totally.
of Reels,
Yeah,
stories, and that stories was
totally,
originally like a Snapchat thing.
totally. It's a funny story about. Speaking of stories, it's actually an interesting like case study on innovation and why it's hard to sustain truly differentiated innovation too, because you
Totally.
just get a whole bunch of people copying you, including bigger players who have a lot more money.
And they had, like, if you think about Meta, and I'm speaking about Facebook and Instagram in this case, they had the audience size to really pull this
Yeah,
off at scale, right?
totally.
Anyways,
Yeah. All right, what do you got?
well, actually, just on speaking of Meta, they spotlight how AI investments are paying off for advertisers. So I found this article on Marketing Dive. So Meta has made AI it's a top theme for them for 2024, investing aggressively in a lot of the AI technology across its business.
Yeah.
So generative AI for them fueled about 24% year over year increase in Meta's ad business in Q4, which
Mm-hmm.
is interesting, but it amounted to about $38.7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Remember we were talking about the billions with Microsoft last week, or I guess a couple of weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
These numbers are just incredible. I can't even fathom this, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
They
How
also
many
saw
zeros is that?
right? Like
That's a lot of zeros.
that is a lot of zeros. They saw increases in users and watch time as well, and they're attributing a lot of that growth to their AI investments and its discovery engine that they've released.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they keep citing the fact that generative AI can help advertisers navigate the signal loss from third-party cookies, which
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some validity to that. But the article, however, didn't speak to the tools individually, like what specific tools actually were able to generate a lot of this
Mm-hmm.
outcome. I would only speculate they're referring to things like the Meta AI assistant, the image generator, There's also AI in the Reels platform. So I feel like it's probably all encompassing, but
Yeah.
that's the one thing I wish they really highlighted, which it was. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. There's so many thoughts I've had. I've been watching a ton of videos on just how to run a lead gen funnel and like what the average marketing podcast out there talks about when or thinks of when they talk about marketing and demand gen, lead gen, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And content is a big part of it, creating lead magnets and that kind of stuff. Thinking back to this conversation we had with Kai and Hannah, if the marketing department is really built around production of content, I can see where tools like this, in terms of generative AI and images and videos and that kind of stuff, can be helpful to reduce the production load on people's plates.
Yeah.
But then I still think you end up using the signals that you've got from Google and Facebook, which is really all about the heavy buyers and just the people that are online and so that are doing stuff. But then that doesn't include all the people who aren't visiting your site and consuming your content that you still need to reach. And so you could have an over index on all the assets you're producing just for the heavy buyers.
It's a great point.
And all the lead gen funnels and all that kind of stuff. You're only using a digital signal instead. And the one thing that was interesting to me about watching all these other videos is they're missing out on like going out and talking to customers.
Yeah.
They're just using a digital signal for every insight that they can generate.
That's a great point. It's funny as we continue to mature in the space, the digital space and whatnot. I think we're all, as marketers, we're all realizing how incredibly valuable it is, but at the same time, how myopic it can be if you're only using that as a way to,
see the world.
I was gonna say like create demand, but I'm like, well, based on Dale's conversation, demand, you can't create it, so that's why I kind of stopped half sentence there. But you know, capitalize on the demand.
Yeah, capitalize on it for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more about that coming up soon, dear listener. It's a great topic.
What do you got next?
Well, similar, actually, generative AI, taking on that storyline. There's a report that came out, I think also, the study came from eMarketer, but more than a third of marketers are expecting increased brand investments this year. So it's an increase of 13% year over year, and which means that there's a decrease of 13% coming from performance marketing. So generative AI is one of the reasons cited for marketers making this shift, because they're able to produce more content, they will produce more customized content and that kind of stuff, and doing it more quickly. So it makes the act of generating the material you're putting through the pipes easier. And so the idea around reach and brand activations is becoming more popular. I would say the article didn't talk about it, but I mean, you've written some awesome stuff and we've had a couple of conversations around cookies.
Yeah.
And I think that's also probably a reason for moving people and shifting in this direction.
I absolutely love this, and I love seeing stories like this. I can speak from experience right now, even internally, the conversation has shifted to more of the bigger moments. How do we capitalize on them? The 60-40 rule and things like that. And while it's not easy just to do overnight in terms of saying, okay, we're just going to start spending this way now, because you have to bring the business along with that. What I love the most is like, these are fundamental questions that are and conversations that are happening again, which I think is important as marketers, that we start defending that brand space as much as possible. So I absolutely love that.
What else you got?
So this is for all my digital marketing friends out there. Search Engine Land reported that Google Analytics 4 adds new dimensions for measuring paid and organic traffic. So they included 8 new dimensions: manual source, manual medium, manual source medium, manual campaign name, manual campaign ID, manual term, manual content and manual source platform. Why this matters? It actually, it enhances the analysis of behaviors and performance across channels. Of course, there's going to be some skewing there that likely happens. So it also depends on your attribution models that you have set up. But they do offer, these new dimensions offer improved capabilities to the exploration, the segments, audience analysis, and even on all fronts reporting. At the end of the day, at least according to the report, it enables better optimization of content strategy based on clear insights for the traffic sources. So I'm all for this. Obviously, I'm a geek here in the context, like you really want to be able to measure as much as possible. And I think these new dimensions kind of help, like I said, help with the optimization of a content strategy. And the great thing is, like, this is available to everybody. Like, this is not, something that you have to pay into. So I love it.
I was thinking about this. I don't know why it came up the other day. I think it was Kai, maybe we were talking to, and he was anyway, there was a report somewhere that said if you reclassify how you report on traffic to your website, and that direct, if you think about it as brand, that happened to me yesterday. If you hold your thumb up on Riverside, it automatically shows this bubble of a thumb. That's weird. Anyway, if I was just counting with my fingers, but if you show direct traffic as brand, and then you show brand traffic as brand, and you add those two things up, and then you look at paid traffic separately, there's a huge percentage of your traffic that's coming from brand. So anyway, just as I was reading all the manual source, manual medium, all that kind of stuff, you can use what's there, but you can also think about those kinds of tools differently. And that was one of those examples where I was like, that's interesting. Thinking about what is brand driving to the organization, like that people remember your name versus just paid traffic from, say, search.
Yep. No, actually, that just reminded me. I don't know if you saw Ian, friend of the podcast. He wrote a great piece on branded terms. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
No, it was just really interesting on like how we should be approaching it from an advertising perspective. And anyways,
right.
I'm going to save that for another analysis.
Yeah,
because it was really, really well written.
Okay, I got another one for you, V.
Yep.
Our favorite topic of all time. Well, not necessarily. AI is probably the hottest topic. Inflation might be number 2.
That's fair.
So there was a report. The U.S. Consumer Price Index came out for January. It rose 0.3% over December, and it was 3.1% higher than a year ago. So what does that mean? Inflation is a thing. I remember when we had that conversation with Herman a while back about inflation, and it usually lasts for like 5 years. And so there's a lot of like optimism around inflation and potentially the Fed's decreasing rates, but they held them. Anyway, it seems like inflation is persistent. Prices in general are coming down for a bunch of categories, but not all categories. And so this could mark potential what's the phrasing of this? Anyway, it could indicate that there's a potential increase in rates coming in the next little whatever 3 months or next quarter or something like that.
Wow.
If inflation doesn't come down. So it's just one of those things where I think it's kind of one of those market indicators that's helpful for marketers to start leading a conversation around pricing strategy, because at some point this has to translate into like profits. And so marketers have an opportunity, I think, to help communicate value instead of just discounts. And so by helping to communicate, balancing the value, to your point around 60-40, like one of the things you can do is talk about benefits, not just costs.
Yep.
And so campaigns generated around benefits of a product and service might help increase the customer's willingness to pay for different products and services.
It comes back to the idea of pricing power, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. One term that I've heard recently that I really like is the RTBs, or the reasons to buy.
Yep.
And really kind of emphasizing those on how that differentiates you potentially from, from competitors and whatnot, and really leaning into that. I think it could be a good way to start curbing that. And I think you're right in the context of maybe we as marketers should be leading this conversation.
Yep.
So good.
Yep. All right, you got a case study.
I got a case study, and this was inspired by Super Bowl that we just had last week.
Sweet.
Over the weekend. So I went back to the most contagious report for 2023. That's just a report that keeps on giving, man. I absolutely love that thing. And they had in there as one of their highlights called the Tubi. I don't know if you've heard of Tubi.
Yeah, I don't really know much about it. I've seen it in the app, and
so Tubi is just a free ad-supported streaming television service that exists for users. It's owned by Fox Corp, which they acquired, I think it was back in 2020 for around $440 million. So it wasn't an insignificant amount of money.
Yeah.
So for in 22 for Super Bowl, so I was going to call it Super Bowl 23. That's not what it is. I don't remember what Super Bowl that would have been.
Oh, it was 58 or something like
58, was it? This was 59, right?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyways, they basically aired a really clever ad during the Super Bowl that made it look like the viewers' TVs were changing channels.
Oh.
So they called this interface interruption, which essentially featured a mock-up of the game's broadcast with a pop-up menu that mimicked that channel change. Now, viewers were like furious with this because they were tricked into thinking that they were watching a different program, but instead they were watching Tubi's logo that led to the next ad. There were some audiences that were really up in arms about it. I think one of the editors at Barstool Sports said that Tubi should be sued for that act. While there was obviously a lot of other audiences thought that they praised the creativity, the playfulness, and especially on social. It was funny because even in some of those comments, viewers were actually blaming their family members for attempting to change the channel in that moment. So it created like this chaos, even within, say, the family rooms. It was just awesome. So that stunt led to about I don't even know how to say this, 1,196% increase. Where's Grace? She could help us with this. Social conversation around Tubi.
Killer chart going on that.
That's right. And became the number 4 trending topics on what was then Twitter, but now X. What they're saying is not only helped increase Tubi's brand recognition, it stood out as a fresh and attention-grabbing amongst just a really packed crowd when you think about just the streaming market. The only thing I would caveat to this, while I think it's a great example of like sometimes you don't need to do AI, GI, be a GI Joe, whatever. Like you can just be really creative with the tools that you have, and I think this is a great example of that. What I don't know is like, because this was against people that were already using the platform, what was the impact from more downloads potentially because of the buzzness? And we know because of PTTC, the buzz does not always correlate to more sales, revenue, etc. So that'd be my only caveat to that. But I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of remind us as marketers, like we don't need to be doing the latest and greatest things. We can just be really creative with what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great call. It's interesting because they're also creating a conversation. May not be the right conversation, but a conversation within the room where there's a whole bunch of people. So it's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of promise to the customer, we had a great question from Lynn. There's a post that we put up around the promise to the customer, like a really short clip from Roger. Yeah, Roger talking about promise to the customer and just some of the key findings on that. So one of the key findings was that the promise to the customer campaigns, and by the way, for you listening, there's a really great report from, I think you can get it from LinkedIn. Just type in promise to the customer and then it's a free download. You don't even have to it's not gated or anything. So it's great. But one of the key findings was that when campaigns that made a promise to the customer ran, they produced significant, better business results, better business outcomes in terms of market penetration, in terms of market share, and in terms of brand health metrics than campaigns that didn't have an explicit promise to the customer.
Right.
On the reverse, non-promise to the customer campaigns had more buzz, to your point before, but not nearly as much impact on the actual key business metrics. So Lynn's question was, does this mean that both promise to the customer and non-promise to the customer campaigns are needed for success across owned, earned, paid, and social?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I think it comes down to what is the objective of the campaign? I think that's where you have to root yourself in. If you're trying to drive those true business KPIs, I would argue leaning into the promise to the customer a lot more makes sense because you're driving an outcome for the business. If, however, you're trying to get in the news, drive more awareness, but your outcome isn't necessarily trying to pull, trying to drive those business metrics, I would argue you can go non-PTC and just try to drive as much quote unquote buzz, but measure it for what it's going to be. Don't try then internally to showcase or I guess trying to say that this also helped in areas like in revenue or driving those business metrics, because I think that's where you can get in trouble a little bit. So that'd be my quick kind of response to that. What do you think?
I would just say lean into the promise of the customer campaigns for me personally, because of what it represents. Like I don't know that the promise of the customer means that you're making a statement, like you can expect this.
Yeah.
It's valuable to you, and you can measure whether we're delivering on that. And so to me, the promise of the customer campaign criteria is really good, because then it creates a conversation within the organization around, well, how are we going to do this, and how are we going to organizationally align to this promise?
That's fair.
And so there's a whole strategic component that extends beyond just the campaign and the ad creative into the business and all departments within the business to make sure that they're rowing the boat and facing the same direction while they're rowing.
Yep.
And so for me, I think it's not just a on and off thing. Like, I think the promise to customer campaigns probably were performing better because that had been something that's happened for a long period of time. And they were measuring the campaigns in the moment, and maybe it was an impact of having done all of these things coordinated in an integrated way for a period of years, but just measuring the campaign in that period of time. So to me, I just feel like if for marketers to gain more credibility, I think we should push more on focusing on the business metrics. You're still going to get some of that PR buzz and all that kind of stuff, but rarely that's ever the objective of an organization. If you're investing money, especially at a period like now where, inflation is high, we were talking about, profits matter and all those kinds of things. Lending rates aren't what they used to be. And so, having cash flow matters. So I would kind of just push towards promise to the customer campaigns.
I cannot disagree with that. I think it helps really build the longevity and things of that nature that are important, again, to business. I think you're right in the context of creating buzz. What does it actually do? Is it really an important, metric? I don't know if it's even a metric, but it's one of those things that if it doesn't actually come with substantial business outcomes, then it's like all for naught. So it can be heralded that this was a great marketing stunt, but if at the end of the day it didn't, say, for example, drive results. I mean, we had an example around Solo, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean...
Yeah, totally.
That's a great question, though, Lynn.
Yeah, it was a really good question. Okay, out of the week, V. This one you got.
You had
it. Oh, I had it. Oh, okay.
It's you.
This one. All right, so... I mean, just coming back to the Super Bowl, it was such a great gift to see Michael Cera with Sarah.
So good. So good.
It's just such an awesome... It was really, really funny, really well done. I mean, as far as the product placement and all that kind of stuff, it was perfect. You saw the like always up close facial like it was,
He was
it
massaging
was-
himself.
he
kinda
was
like
massaging a rock, a mountain with. He's
Yeah.
trying to hydrate the mountain with his. Anyway, there's lots of really good stuff there. Yeah, and I agree with. There's a note here that you put in here about Buble and Bubbly. Like, there's just so much fun that can happen when you have a really good partnership and a collaboration with a celebrity.
Yeah.
When it's the right fit, and this was to me a really great fit.
I know, like right now, there's this big question around: do celebrities really help brands because their brand is usually overpowering the product that they're potentially, endorsing?
Yeah,
I would argue there's moments like this where it works really well together, and
Yeah.
the creative execution on this was just incredible.
yeah.
So good.
And he's also not the guy that I see in all, like we were talking about watch ads and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, or, like he's not in a ton of other things. So there's very little mental competition for
That's a
his
great point.
brand. Like, I think it's a good fit.
It was a fantastic fit. It was
Yeah.
really well done. And I think for me, that and the Dunk Kings, I don't know if you saw that one for Super Bowl.
I saw like on my feed a little, but I didn't listen to the audio. I just was.
So for me, between those two would have been like the Super Bowl ad of the year,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Okay.
So anyways,
I got to watch that one.
Yeah. What's coming up next week?
We got Angela Voss from Marketing Architects talking about the evolution of TV. We had a conversation that meandered into Super Bowl creative. And then, what does that mean for the impact on, marketers today and running small companies and up to big companies, and what the opportunities are for TV. So,
yeah. It was a great conversation. Looking forward to getting that out there next week.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome, buddy.
Okay. And that's it.
That's a wrap.
That's the brief.
That's
it.
The Barber's brief for today, Thursday, February 15th. Makes us pretend that this isn't pre-recorded, but it's all pre-recorded.
I was like, wait a sec. It's not Thursday. Did I miss a day?
It's all
I had a good sleep. I didn't realize I slept that long.
That's a good one. All right.
Okay, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Go chase profitability, everybody.
Yes.
Gotta weed that somewhere in there.
I love it.
I love the fact that we're not that scripted as we could be.
Yeah. I think it works. Works for me.
So.
Yeah.
Me too. That's awesome.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ciao.